Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mountain Ground podcast. And this week we have the full strength blend in the house again. It's Peter, Fredrik, myself and Nicoles. And we're happy to bring you a week of firsts. We'll discuss our first experiences in the mountains, hiking, doing whatever. And also our first introduction or experiences to coffee. For me, it's definitely two quite vivid experiences because neither of them from my childhood. But I'm not going to keep you up any longer. Let's get right into it. And I think one of the Gegrond members will start with his first hiking experience.
Peter, are we going to start with the youngest first? Fredrik?
The youngest.
Well, Peter, it was your birthday like 3 days ago, so I don't know what the ages are there.
Yeah, I'm at that age where it's not... it's at one of those age where you almost want to switch the two numbers around.
I think he was aiming at us mentioning his birthday, and maybe he gets a few gifts. I'm happy to start, Peter. If you guys are happy to hear my stuff, I think first hikes. Just when you guys told me that's the topic, I had to think really hard because obviously your first hike. Well, I was privileged enough that I was really young when I had my first hike, and that was I can't remember the year, but it was in Tabazimbi on my grandfather's farm. It's basically the farm. It was inside what is now the Marakele National Park. So he was farming with cattle, and we always went there for holidays. And that one specific holiday, my dad said, "Listen, I'm taking all the boys for a hike. We're going up the mountain, and we're doing a loop, and we're coming back, and we're sleeping 2 nights." So we were very excited, and everyone got to the farmhouse, and we were packing our stuff, and my parents bought a lot of sweets and stuff for all the kids. And then before we started hiking, my dad went through all our bags to see that we don't carry unnecessary crap with us. And my cousin Rian, he opened his bag, and there was a 2-liter bottle of hair gel in his hiking bag, but the bottle was only 500. There was only like 500 mils of gel in there. He was very conscious of his looks back then, so it was a very difficult.
Rian didn't even have it to go and wax. I think there was
exactly. Yeah, he thought he's going to impress all the bookies. But
so you really throwing you under the bus here.
Yeah, we hiked. We didn't take a lot of water with because the farmers, the neighboring farm said, "No, man, it rained and there's a lot of water in the mountains." So we started hiking, and eventually we couldn't find any water. So it was pretty dry. So we needed to change course to get down to the river. And in the end, the second day, I can remember is we were having a braai, and we were just chucking the bones in the bush. And we didn't have tents. We didn't sleep in tents. We only slept in our sleeping bags. And everyone was like huddled up next to my dad because we were really small boys, and we were afraid of hyenas and stuff. And then we heard some bones being crunched, but we never saw anything. But then my brother came, and he squished in between me and my dad, and I was lying against kind of a slope, and I was feasting on my condensed milk bottle, a can next to me. But I was asleep now, and the can was standing next to me, and then he pushed me, and I rolled over the can, drenched my whole sleeping bag in condensed milk, woke up the next morning like 2 meters away against a tree, just full of leaves and ants and stuff. Yeah, it was a fun memory.
Yeah, you.
It was my first hiking
Yeah, I
experience.
feel like I remember even at school because
Very cool.
these is cousin basically. Yeah, we are actually friends as well, and like I used to like just listen to all these stories when they go, especially with your grandfather. I think you guys have some great memories with your grandfather as well, going on your trips into Africa, and like it does sound like you had a good outdoorsy upbringing, and the stories. I think that was probably one
Yeah.
of the more tame stories that you've divulged now. Like,
Well, it was the youngest one that I can remember.
yeah, and so Pierre, did you also like obviously being in the mountains at the moment and making a living and living that lifestyle? Is that something that you guys grew up with, or you specifically? And then Nicoles, did you guys grow up with being outdoors, or is it something that only later in life developed?
So to be honest, I think I've got the latest experience in the mountains as a, in an age chronological point of view. So Nicolette's been in the mountains much earlier, so I'm going to hand over to her, and she can tell us a bit about her experience in the mountains, because it started quite young, and I'm often a little bit jealous about it. But let her tell the stories.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, so I was very privileged growing up in a really outdoors orientated family. My grandparents have a game farm in the low veld, and they've had a stand of some sort there for since as long as I can remember. So we frequently went up to the Hoedspruit area and spent a lot of time outdoors there, birding, wildlife, that sort of thing. And so my first hike was actually the Bleder Rivierspruit hiking trail, and I think I was either 5 or 6, but thereabouts. I could only just carry a bag with my own clothes, and I suppose it must have been tough, but that's not the part I remember. What I remember is a lot of fun, swimming in the river every day. It must have been summer. Swimming in the river, playing in the rock pools, jumping off rocks, building sand castles. And the one thing that stands out was I know my grandmother, she carried these little pocket bears. I don't know if any of you guys had them, but there's like these little rubber bears, and they all had names, and they like would have something specific about them. So there was like one bear had its honey, and the other one was riding a horse, and they were called pocket bears. And they all came with a little card and a description, and they had a name. And I was obsessed with these
It sounds
things.
like there's things like
But yeah,
JoJo's. Like we had JoJo's, I think.
Yes.
JoJo's, which was like, and then you had this King JoJo.
Maybe.
But
Yeah,
I do
maybe
remember
this was
those
more of a
stories.
girls thing. But anyway, so every day, my reward for completing the hike, and I think it was only 3 days, was to get a new pocket bear, which was quite exciting for me. And my little pocket bear would go down to the river and also swim and play in the sand. And yeah, so that was my first hike and introduction to the outdoors and walking. I don't remember much more than that. Later on, I had more Drakensberg mountain experiences for the when I matriculated. I did a 3-day hike in the Berg. That was kind of my equivalent of matric vac or rage or whatever people do these days. It didn't
Sure.
involve much, if any, alcohol. And I know my uncle walked us to pieces in 3 days. So yeah, definitely more mountain orientated than the social element of things.
So you had the bubble house without the alcohol.
Look, my legs were scratched to smithereens from descending Ship's Prow Pass, not on the trail. Even though the trail is faint, we definitely were not on it.
No.
Right, Peter, let us
Yeah, it's
enlighten us on your early adventure days.
yeah, like I won't lie. Like I also only started hiking really late in my life. I didn't, like I was raised pretty much by my mom, and being a single parent, there wasn't really as many outdoors activities and all the rest. Like life was quite busy. I think Fredriks cousin, the one who he says gels his hair, although when you see him, it doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't have much to gel, but like we would go on a few like little, basically some cycling trips. So, but in my life, I think the first hike that I did was with Fredriks cousin, with Fredrik there as well, and it was actually the Fani Bota, very close to Fredrik. We can call it the Fredrik Bota as well sometimes. But so that was actually my first hike, and I think that was only probably at the age of 24 or 25 when I actually did my first hike and slept over in the berg and outdoors really, which looking back, it's definitely something that I wish I could have done earlier, and I don't think really I can make a lot of excuses because as you grow older you probably have a lot of opportunities. I think my focus in life just changed, and I still remember being a real I don't even know, like noob, to this whole scene of hiking. So on the first trip, I had a few beers in my pack, and I was like carrying like a frozen piece of meat, everything and I was carrying probably 28 kilograms for 2 days of hiking. But I do remember very, very clearly the sense of adventure, having your backpack, and also that relief of leaving a lot of the things that you deal with just behind and focusing on the things that you're doing now, which is you're in really good company, you're in the nature, you swim in rivers, that was a whole, that opened a lot of, not doors for me, it just basically opened up a new way of doing things and seeing perspective. Yeah, I think perspective is the right word. It changed my perspective on a lot of things, and I do remember that, and the good conversations. I think we even at one stage we call ourselves the 3 stappeteers, and during that time for 2 days we were all developing this thing about the stappeteers, about how we're going to share tips about hiking in the outdoors and all the rest, which is probably something that eventually 10 years on we're actually doing, just maybe a little bit more on an educational level than just the discussions we had at the time. So yeah, that was the Fani Bota, 2 day stay, 2 days of hiking, and yeah, that basically from there it was an exponential up ramp. so Pierre, I
must say, if there's one tip that came from that stop, is take Peter with, because he can carry quite a bit of beer.
Yeah, how things have changed now. It's like now I don't think, to be honest, I think that was one of my first and last, maybe second last hiking trip that I've taken, like anything that weighs more than 330 milliliters or 330 grams to consume on a hike.
Well, I can. Sorry, Pierre. Just one last note while we're on Peter. It's another hike that Peter and myself we did, and with a different group as well. It was the Otter, and like usual, Peter had a few beers, and everyone had a few drinks. But by the fourth hut, the final hut, is it the fifth hut, the fourth hut? I'm not even sure. Everyone's kind of dry. So we hiked and we knew Nature's Valley, obviously, that's like 18 k's from the last hut. And we're spending it's the last night on the Otter, so it needs to be memorable. So when we arrived there, Peter talked me into let's run to Nature's Valley and go and get us some drinks for the evening. So as soon as we took everything out of the ladies' bags because they're smaller. So and we started running. So we did, after the last day, we did the 18k, and then it's 18k return, so it's 9k, and then we bought a few papsakken of wine.
Not a few papsakken. It was just the one. So, one small one.
And chocolates and the ice cream, and then we went back.
Yeah, we did have a luxury night. I remember,
Okay.
like after that run, we were just feasting on ice creams when we got to the shop. And then gone back. I think I don't know. We're probably for one of the few people who've done that, but like it does make you realize,
Yeah, no, carry
No, I
on.
was just saying, like, you do get these two different types of hike because, fast forwarding like a year or two, and then suddenly you're completely wild camping, no luxuries, so, I think it is a progressive development, and yeah, so quite a journey. So Pierre, on to you. Your first hike, where, when, how long?
Yeah. No, I think before I get there, I'll kind of like give a bit of background why I thought this topic would be quite cool. It's obviously just because I suspected, Fredrik, yeah, you've got quite a long history of hiking and stuff. Peter honestly didn't know where your adventure side started, so it's very cool to get that insight. Um, and Nicolette, obviously, I knew she was hiking with her uncle and them up in the Berg, and the stories. I think if you want a pretty hardcore hike, go hike with her uncle. Like, he will be up before you in the morning. I know Nicolette said like she tried to be up before him some mornings, and then he would like watch like already be up. And no, the places they hiked is like she was an 8-year old and going up the camel and stuff like that.
Jeez.
So obviously I've got that, and then we were hiking with a family. So I had a Dutch family that contacted me and wanted to do a Tugela overnight hike. And then another one of my athletes, she's hiked with us last year. And we also did a Lowerberg sleep out in a cave. And she's got 4 kids, so it was her kids' like first overnight hike in the Berg. And this year she said that she really wants to take them to the escarpment. So we kind of like slotted these two trips in almost like back to back, and went up with a Dutch family, and it was really amazing for me to spend time up there with a family. Um, because obviously I never had these experiences also as a kid. Like I was just, we played rugby and that's that. No time for walking around outdoors. You needed to play rugby, every weekend and all that kind of stuff. So it was really cool. The kid was 13 years old. I think the two daughters were like, I think they were twins. They were 21, and one of their partners joined on the trip. And just watching them, because we had pretty wild conditions on that evening. We had perfect conditionings until the wind picked up. And then, the river froze over, bottles froze. The next morning, the wind was chaotic. And kind of being part of their, like, helping them pack up. I don't want to say teaching them how to pack up the tents and everything, but it was really nice to play a role in their experience up on the mountains, and the connection I could with a 13-year-old, like the kid, like me and him could talk a lot, and it was really, I just hope I could inspire a bit of adventure in him. And then I picked up Nita, who's one of my athletes. Like I think we've been working together for like 2 years, so we obviously know each other very well, and I've known, both me and Nicolette have guided her kids on a trip as well. So going up to the escarpment, we were very worried about, like, are we gonna have the right gear or not for them and everything. But I just eventually said, like, look, as long as you know it's gonna be the coldest night of your life, you won't die, everything will be fine. So we went up, and like it was really cool to just like see these kids really flourish, and she does like manage them very well. So very disciplined, very like your proper Afrikaans family, I'd say. Anyway, but the reason I thought about this topic was the next morning I was busy packing up outside, and I heard the two boys in the tent, and they're 15 and 16 years old. And I just heard the one go, "Hey, you had my coffee gesteel." So for the English listeners, it's like, "Hey, where's my coffee? You took my coffee." And I thought about, wow, I didn't even drink coffee back then, but I also didn't hike. Like it was all these different new things. So I guess that just made me think about these are experiences I would have loved. And I grew up at the base of the Toys Peak, like in the Toys Cliff Mountains. you could look for 360 degrees around my house, and it was just vineyards and mountains, like in Rawsonville, small town on the Cape there. And I never actually ventured out. So for me, it's always been a thing to try and make up lost time, I think, when I go into the mountains now. But we shouldn't look at it in that way, I think. It just helps us appreciate the mountains more now, and adventure, and like how do we define adventure and all that stuff. And it's really just it's just more stimulating. So then fast forward back to my first hike. It was actually also quite old because obviously I started running before I started, hiking. So I've actually done my first like through the night run before I've ever done my first sleep at night. Like I never saw the
Overnight
point
hike.
in yeah, I never really saw the point in, carrying heavy tents and wasting time by sleeping. Like we could run 100 Ks in 25 hours. Why should I, hike two 8K kind of legs together in my ignorant state? Now I enjoy it so much. Anyway, so the first time I actually did a proper hike was when I moved to Joburg for the first time. So that was in 2016. I moved from Port Alfred to Joburg. I've been running probably for about 4 or 5 years. I've done the Skyrun 100, and so I've been running quite a bit. I've done an adventure race, War Trail we did through the night. But when I moved to Joburg, I was kind of like, I need to prove to myself that I can live in this place. Because for me, as a Cape Townian growing up, there was only two things that was good about Joburg, and one thing that was good about Joburg, and that was the road out of Joburg. So there was a friend from Knysna,
And there
Chris
we lose all our
Crutzen, that was
Joburg
up here as
listeners.
well. No, but wait. No, so then I met up with the guy that I used to work with on Otter. He was the trail director, and we helped him like route mark, etc. And he was living in Joburg as well, him and his family. So he's like, yeah, up here for my birthday, I want to do the Nicoles Traverse. Let's go hike it. So, I told him, okay, cool, great, I'm in, cool. What do I need? He's like, well, a backpack, but we're going to go for 3 days. So you need to carry like sleeping bag and everything. So out came my old 65-liter hiking pack that I bought when I was like Euro tripping. So I was not like Nicolette hiking through the Drakensberg on my matric weekend. Like, yeah, I was running around on the beach probably. But when I traveled through Europe, I did buy myself a backpack, and I still had this backpack. So we started at Commandonek, not knowing the route, nothing. We had an old map of the Witwatersrand Stap Club, and we started walking, and yeah, 3 days later we were on the other side, and it was like 78 kilometers, and just magic. The Michalisburg to me, that's why the Michalisburg to me is just so special. It's one of the most special places in the world. And I'll never forget the first night sitting on top of the Michalisburg with Chris. And yes, I carried 3 bottles of wine. Very nice. Yeah, very nice wine we got at the Otter, called Painted Wolf. And they do a lot of work with regards to the painted wolf, or like the wild dogs. So it's a very, very nice wine. Bit expensive though, but otherwise it's very nice. But we were just sitting on top there, and he just went like, wow, Pierre, when you moved to Joburg, did you ever think you would sit on top of a mountain range older than the Himalayas and sleep under the stars in your sleeping bag just out there? And to me, that was like a penny drop moment. It's like wherever I am, I can make it the life I want it to be. Um, and that's what I appreciate about the people in Joburg. Is I started climbing, I started running at a level that I've never run before, started mountain biking up here. I just realized that here no one says, 5 hours to the Berg, it's too far. They just say, well, jump in the car, let's carpool, let's go. It's never, people in Joburg really make an effort to do things. And that I think is a really like a nice community to be part of. So from there on, I just, hiked a lot. I think my next proper hike was the Grand Traverse, though, when me and Nicolette did it. Like, I never did much hiking in between. It was a lot of, like, fast packing. But it was also the first time I wore hiking boots, was on a Grand Traverse that I guided. So I think a lot of my experiences came very late. But it's a lot of fun. I'm glad Peter also came out with only on a 24-year-old hiker. Like I thought Peter was also not gonna go like, yeah, since I was like 2 years old, I was just like lugging stuff up the mountains. Because I have seen Peter's backpack when he packs, like he packs all his coffee stuff, everything. Like, so no, I think it's so nice to have the insight into all of your hikes and where everyone comes from. Because I think it doesn't matter where we all come from. We all now sitting at the table, sharing experiences and hopefully some tips and value that we can give to others. So, yeah, on that note,
Pierre, you
we can take it to coffee if we want to.
yeah, I just want to say like your hiking experience is almost like it reminds me sometimes of studying in first year. You know, you have some of those subjects where you get through the exam, but only once you're in the practice, then you need to reopen the book again and then go to step one. So you've passed the exam by doing all the running and all the rest of the things, and now you go back to step one and you learn the curriculum. No.
No, and you learn a lot. Like the reason I really enjoy, say, hiking in the Drakensberg in summer and not running is purely because, like, if you have any appreciation for natural beauty and flowers,
Mm.
it's the place to be. Like the amount of wild orchids and things we found up there from just mostly getting lost, because if you're off the beaten track, I guess you more bound to find flowers that haven't been trampled on or wilder spaces, and that's just through having the time. You know, you take your time. We always say, like, people always go like, "Ah, but you always want to move so fast." I'm like, no, like, come move with us, and you'll see we never move faster than what is required.
Mm.
Yes, if we have a very big day, you know, if I want to do 50 Ks in a day, yes, I'm going to have to move fast. But if my objective is to see flowers and birds, well, it's kind of irrelevant where I end up that night because I just want to spend the daytime moving through nature and appreciating it and taking photos where I want to. So it's all about what is your objective when you head out.
Mm.
It's not so much about, you know, we're not one track minded at all. We love to appreciate everything. And I think, yeah, you know, like Peter talking about the Fani Botha as his first experience. Like I've never hiked the Fani Botha and I would love to do it. So that is definitely, you know, something still on my my to-do list. Let's put it that way.
You must subscribe.
So there's a lot of experiences that we can bring in.
Maybe we should organize a mountain ground hiking trip.
No, most definitely. Like
Do a
we
trail
get our
that no one has done.
mountain ground podcast, the blend out, and then we go as a team and we go hike on the on the whatever. Let's do it the Fani Botha.
We'll give ourselves a bit of a coffee challenge with that as well. Does coffee at a certain altitude taste the same as at the top of a mountain? Like that's one of the things that I thought of as a next topic to be discussed. You know, like if you start at the base of a mountain, you make coffee. It's obviously your temperature and everything changes, but that is this topic for another podcast.
And that will tie in very well with a podcast on how altitude affects your athletic performance and nutrition at altitude. And we were actually listening to a podcast today, which is, I guess inspired us and was super interesting. But there's so many physiological factors that change in the human body when you do move up to altitude. So I'm sure it's similar with coffee. Like it can't all be the same. Would be very interesting to discuss some of those differences.
So, Pierre, you were saying that nice story about these. I'm not sure what their age was, but obviously their first coffee experience and their, you know, passion for starting their day with a cup of coffee. You know, what was? You know, you've mentioned that you haven't really grown up with coffee as, you know, your, let's just say, kickstarter for the morning. When was your first real account of having a good cup of coffee? I think we'll switch the topic a bit around. Not your first coffee, but your first good cup of coffee.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there with making the distinction between like first good cup of coffee, because I guess coffee, it's always around, but that first coffee that really goes, this should be part of my life. It's a different one. So yeah, look, I grew up. My mom drank a lot of coffee, and I think like I drank, like, I love my rooibos tea. So like I was rooibos tea made like a lot of sugar. But then only after school, like when I was after school, I spent a year in the UK on a gap year, and there was a Costa's coffee in I live in a little town called Stamford, proper little cobblestone town, beautiful. But I would go for my walk, and I would like have coffee at Costa's there always. And for me, that was the first time coffee became a ritual. Like I just had coffee most days of my life. And since then, obviously, I guess as is my personality, I'm quite, I guess, obsessive. Usually take things to the extreme, and also quite. I think I've got a bit of an addictive personality, So I always joke with regards to coffee. Like when I talk to people, I sometimes go, "Yo, I just need to go get some personality first. Let me go pour it. Let me go make a cup of coffee, and then we can talk." So since then, and especially then, I always joked with like when I was a pilot. I just say like, well, pilots, we don't work that much. So especially the flying I did, like the corporate flying, I didn't work much. So I actually had the time to obsess over coffee, and I enjoy waking up early. So I would like if I had a 5 or 6 o'clock departure, I had to say be at OR Tambo at 5 or 4 in the morning. And I would wake up like 1 or 2 in the morning to give me like an extra half hour or 45 minutes to make my coffee and actually enjoy it before I start the day. I hate like pouring coffee into like a flask and just rushing into my car and now just like drinking it. Like, yes, my second or third cup can be that. But that first cup for me must, I want to sit in a peaceful space and I want to enjoy my coffee and I want to think about it and I want to taste it. I want to look at it and I want to see the color. I want to smell it and I want to see what I can pick up. And then I want to taste it and I want to see like, ooh, why is it not tasting that nice this morning? Or why is it so much better this morning? And all the variables. And then I also through Otter, everyone there loved coffee. So and the guys from Bean there used to give us coffee on the route. So Jono from Bean there, he worked on the event as well. And then for that was the first time I ever realized there was something as single origin. So I always just thought coffee is coffee is coffee, whether that's an Italian blend or Brazilian blend or, a Burundi or, like like a single origin coffee from somewhere. And then with Gegrond, with you guys, I realized like how specific it becomes. You got the Murambi Hills or, a specific area. And then the altitude and obviously the complexity of it really just gets me and I love it. So no, the coffee journey I think is a ever evolving one, and that's why I'm so fortunate or so like stoked to be involved with you guys because the passion you guys have for it, going to a processing plot farm this weekend, and just everything from it. Like when I have a cup, we had coffee with Peter in Ireland. He doesn't no, like I don't even know if he knew I was watching or listening, but he made his coffee and he goes, and he like dissects the taste. And like, peachy or this, it's just nice. You can see the passion coming through. So I think like I've digressed completely because my coffee was from a very standard point of view. It was just like another, I guess Costa's is the equivalent of Starbucks, but that routines for me started there. Like obviously I was in boarding house before that, so there was no coffee to be served. It was just
Not
like,
even Rick coffee.
I guess tea. Yeah, Rick coffee, bro. But anyway, no, so from where it developed is very similar to the hiking, I think, or the adventure side of it. It's like once this world opens to you, it's your choice your choice what you do with it. Like how deep do you want to go into it? Um, because that's our choice. The information is there, the opportunity is there. It's your choice to decide how much does this, how passionate I'm about it, and then how deep do I want to go into it. And that's why I love adventure and coffee because it's two things I'm very passionate about, and I think both of them make my life so much better.
Oh, that's very true story, and I do like that giving yourself a bit of that extra headroom in the morning to prepare a cup of coffee becomes quite a ritual thing. If I was to think back, I started out with this mocha pot and a bit of a similar experience where the best thing in the morning to get me out of bed was that bit of excitement to go and make this mocha pot. I think it's maybe the way that it brews the coffee, and like before I was really too involved in coffee, I was that guy that let it sprout out. So it was a little bit of a chemical reaction thing going on there. So
Don't worry, that's still most people. Well, most people we know.
yeah. So, but if I was to think of my really I think the thing that hooked me on coffee completely and was it was 2000. It was 2018, and at that stage, I still just like, I don't think I was too passionate about coffee back then. I just really liked coffee, and then I started tasting different origins and different companies. But what really changed things for me was Winston was, I think it was 2018. He had this World Barista coffee, and I actually looked it up on one of my emails. I actually looking at the invoice for that specific coffee, and it was a Project Origin Jasper, and it was like a limited edition release. And I'll be honest, when I started out with coffee, I couldn't taste all these aromas and all the rest. I really tried, but I just thought I just don't have it. And then for this coffee, I could taste the strawberries and I could taste the strawberry yogurt. And I was so excited. I was like, Fredrik, you need to come and taste this. You won't believe me. Like, you can actually taste the strawberries and the yogurt. And and then I made Fredrik a cup, and he agreed with me. Like, he can also taste the flavors. And I thought, well, this might be my talent, like I can taste these flavors. And obviously there was still a lot of work to be done to really develop your palate. So it wasn't so easy. It was just a really good coffee, but that changed things for me. So that's my.
I must say, that is the first amazing coffee that I can also remember. It's also changed my perspective of coffee. Is that one that Peter shared with me, and I still remember he was. I think you were making a V60, and I was sitting on the couch on the other side of the room, and I was smelling it. I was like, Peter, that's like strawberry yogurt. It's like, yeah. Sure, and that was very far away from what I was used to, because I started out with the Frisco or coffee on the farm. You get there on holidays, and you never really know what's the flavor of the month. Have they decided to take Frisco, or I think it was mostly a what's on special kind of decision, and. Then I actually started only drinking tea, and I only revisited coffee in university again. My dad started buying fancy coffee, the pre-grind checkers, those blocks that you can build a house with, those really hard blocks of pre-ground. And he was making it, and he was saying, no, you should drink it without milk and sugar, and this is how you drink your coffee. And I was drinking at that time, I think, white tea with like anything between 4 and 7 sugars, depending on how I was feeling. So when I was like, okay, well, I probably need to start drinking coffee because I really need to pick up my social life. And that's something that everyone does. I started drinking it, and I decided, okay, well, I need to cut out the sugar, so let me start coffee off black and without sugar. So I've actually been drinking coffee from the start, except for the Recoffee and Frisco, black and without sugar. Yeah. So I never had to make that transition.
Yeah, you knew. I remember with that Frisco and Recoffee, like, it's going okay in the house, like when you get the Nescafe Classic. When the Nescafe Classic starts to go into the cupboard, then you know it's not going, it's going well. Nicolette and yourself, like, where did things start out for you?
Yeah, so for me, growing up, look, fortunately, we never had the privilege of Recoffee or Friscoes or any of those. My family was proper Nescafe Gold type of people, but it also didn't extend beyond that. So honestly, I didn't drink coffee until my first year out of school, and then it probably related to my athletic endeavors more than anything else. Not that I was trying to use it as a stimulant, but I would wake up really early and go to gym, do spinning sessions, maybe double spinning, yoga, swim, and then come home. And by the time 3, 4 in the afternoon came around, I was exhausted. And so I decided, well, I've heard this thing called coffee keeps you awake and gives you some energy, and let me give it a go. And my first coffee was like Frederick, it was without sugar. It did have milk and it was instant, unfortunately. But yeah, from there I progressed, and also, like most athletes, I guess, I went through a stage of trying to lose some weight, improve my power to weight ratio. And there, a good cappuccino never goes amiss. Got lots of milk for protein and the caffeine to keep you going, like I was used to. And so, yeah, I guess I went from kind of like your better instant coffee to a good cappuccino. And then, yeah, like I unfortunately can't say like Peter that I've developed my specifics for tasting the flavors of good black coffees. I enjoy a nice espresso, but I'm much more of a cappuccino person. So I guess that's just the standard runner coming out in me.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to hear everyone's backgrounds on, coffee and stuff as well, because like same with the Gillette, I do enjoy like my first coffee is a proper cappuccino, and then I do taper it down to Americano based or espresso, just because I think you can't stomach that much milk later on in the day. And it's nice to sometimes taste different coffees. Like I remember when I grew up on the wine farm in the Toyskloof, at the Toyskloof wine cellar. And me and my dad would sometimes go taste wines on the weekend. We'll just be in the lab and just be, it's the exact same thing as coffee. You look at the color, um, you taste it, in first there's almost like you feel it on your palate. Like, is it heavy? Is it soft? Is it light? And then only the flavors come. And what's the initial flavor versus the flavor it leaves, like the aftertaste almost. And obviously smell makes a big part of it as well. What do you smell on? And I love anything that incorporates all my senses. And it's the same with like, I guess, moving in the mountains or rock climbing or anything. When your senses and when everything is that heightened, like, and then you just bring the experience of feeling the rock as well, and like everything is just like it's true living, I feel. So yeah, I just love anything that can get me so excited. And listening to Peter explain his coffee story there, that's the most, I think, alive I've ever seen Peter now. Like, I know it's virtual, but the excitement that came through in his voice and the excitement in his eyes, like, it's amazing, like how, yeah, I think it's incredible if you can tap into people's passions and like discover it. And that for me was really cool with the hiking with these with the families, like to give families that opportunity and to discover maybe passions of kids that you wouldn't know, and like a normal child that maybe gets seen as, disruptive or naughty at school. Well, put him in the mountains and he might be, brilliant, because then there's reasons behind the things you tell them to do or not to do. Because there's actual consequences if you don't do it, like breaking up camp the next morning. We had gale force winds and these tents were going to rip apart if it won't, if you start breaking them down and you don't do it quick. And, just Nicolette stepped in with the one group and I went with the other, and having these kids just listen to us and like just follow and being so efficient. It was just fascinating and just made me think about hiking and outdoor schooling, if you want to go that way, but we're not going to go down that level now. So, but for now, for me, it is just like, actually what this podcast for me has turned into now is listen to people's passions and see how that talks to them. And everyone has got a different passion because we're all individual. So, Peter, Frederick, Nix, thanks for sharing your passions, with us tonight. Like it's special to get that kind of insight into someone's life.
Yeah, no, and thanks for yourself as well, Pierre. And I can extend the same to Nicolette and Frederick. It was a good chat, and it's it was good insight into everyone's background, all different backgrounds, and yet here we sit sharing the same experiences, enjoying the same things, which is.
One last thing, I think maybe you guys can organize some of Winston's strawberry yogurt flavored coffee for me. And maybe it will change my life as well.
If I only had some of those left, but that will be our.
Gegrond will make one.
We'll make one.
Cool, guys.
It's
Thanks.
easier to make coffee flavored, coffee tasting yogurt than the other way around.
No, I don't like flavored yogurt at all. I'm strictly double cream plain yogurt, so it'll have to be the coffee. Sorry.
Okay, cool. We've run out of time. Thanks, guys, so much. And then, as always, please give us feedback. Reach out to the Gegrond team or to the Mountain Abandon team, or Dex Dog Runs on Instagram. He also seems to make a lot of noise in the background here. But we would love to get your feedback on the podcast, how we can improve it. What do you like? Don't be too critical on what you don't like, but you can slip it in there. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and otherwise just hit us up with a message. We would love to connect to people, even if you just want to share your story with us. I'm always open and keen to talk to people. So, man, thanks so much for listening. And we hope we can grow this Mountain Ground podcast and see where it goes.